So what we've been doing is we've been working on our design system course lately and haven't had a super big chance for updating and implementing those changes to our Shipwright 2.0 UI kit. There's currently been over 6,000 plus downloads. So we just want to take the time to, again, thank everyone for giving, love to us and the design kit itself. And then take the opportunity today just to go over some of the changes and some of the best practices that we have made since.
So before we jump right into the updates that we have for you, I really quickly want to showcase the previous version. This is a snapshot of the previous version of the Shipwright 2.0. So what we really did was a quick UX audit using our UX audit template, which is available for free on Figma Community on an old version of the Shipwright, and found that there are a lot of ways the file could be better organized. Right now, it's hard to find a component when you have to keep scrolling across the screen. So the layout could definitely be improved. And not just the structure, but some of the components in our old version need to have properties applied to them, such as inputs. As you can see in this snapshot, we have a lot of variants that could definitely be reduced. Designers were having a hard time with the things like table components, checkboxes, radio buttons, lists, and many more. So we haven't really used the component properties that Figma has to offer in many components. So thought, why not improve this version and make it a lot better?
Awesome. So there's been many updates across the board, major updates that we've made, but today we're just going to go quickly over just a few of those for you. This will essentially include our file structure revisions or organization of components, also as well just some color and interactive states, more simplified components such as tables and inputs, and then implementing Figma properties themselves. So let's go ahead and dive in. Just going to come flip over here to Shipwright. So the first change that we want to talk about is our organization and our file structure. So you can see here that we've just kind of changed this up in terms of our file structure. We've gone more with an alphabetical approach and individual pages for each type of component. So we're still using our original foundation of our atomic layout. So we have our tokens, our atoms, down here our molecules, and so on and so forth. But with this kind of layout and more to divide it into individual component pages themselves, it's just a little bit easier now to search components, easier to locate any kind of components that you're looking for, to really just kind of make it easier to find what you need a little bit quicker. Another kind of thing that we've implemented here is our tables here. So just kind of zooming in here to give everyone a better look. So what we have here is we just have tables within each of our atomic kind of headers, and these tables can kind of just help you to find components, find anything that you're looking for within the Shipwright design system. And another thing that's really neat here too is that they all have links. So anything that you want to go to once you're in these tables, you can essentially use that link to go directly there. These are all also aligned in alphabetical order as well, so it's really helpful. So what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and go to color next just to talk about that. So we'll just use our tables to go there. So this takes us right to our color set. So again, zooming in here for everyone, some essential changes here that we've made is first up, just kind of downsizing and cleaning up our color system. So as you can see here, we've kind of just cleaned up some colors with our utility colors, just kind of downsizing and scaling down there in terms of what we have, but still having our brand colors, still have our typography colors. So anyone who's familiar with our previous Shipwright, those are all still there for you. The next big thing that we've kind of done in terms of overhaul on this new release is our interactive colors. So kind of, again, because color is a major indication of elements that are interactive, we started to add and kind of just revise Shipwright's original interactive states here. We thought a little bit deeper around the naming of the interactive states themselves, and then just essentially wanted to make sure that what we're naming them has the right impact on the correlating elements that they'll be used on. So as you can see here, for such, we've added a focus state. We've kind of changed our naming conventions into more representative of what those interactive states are. So just kind of a top change overall in the implementation. The other kind of big thing we've done here too, as you can kind of see here, is that we've added our on-light confirmation and on-light destructive, on-dark confirmation, on-dark destructive. So we have both those interactive confirmation and destructive options, and then we have those for the light and dark options as well. So within this realm, too, just to kind of let everyone, get caught up to where we're at, is that we've actually been working also with our team of developers here at Headway. Again, just on sync in terms of color and interactive states and tokenization and everything. And one thing that we've done, just to keep in good synergy, again, to make sure we're aligning with what's good and helpful for developers, what's good and helpful for designers, and how can they work, in synchrony and harmony for there. But one thing we've also done too is that we've been working on a plugin widget that we actually will be releasing soon, in order to just help create. It essentially just helps you populate tokens a little bit better. So it'll help you populate global styles of color, global styles of typography really quickly and really fast, just so you can get use this UI kit to get up and running pretty quickly. So just look for that in the future. That will be going ahead and being released soon. And then we'll be working on to add more tokens to that as well, essentially too. And then just kind of going here, just kind of looking around to some other updates we did was our stroke colors. So we've added this for you to easily utilize just the stroke colors a little bit better on elements like cards that have a surface color. And then that will take us, just going to zoom in here again, that will take us to our surface colors, which was kind of our next kind of revision and overhaul. So we essentially readjusted the surface system itself. And since we didn't have this before, this is a really kind of great add-in. We also edited our naming here just to be more in line with how colors are being used, especially our surface colors, such as elements like cards and such. So this just helps kind of keep that in sync with how, again, everything's kind of being utilized by users in design and development. And you'll notice here that in the earlier version of Shipwright, we didn't have the light and dark options. So now we have those as well. So a little demo of these interactive updates can be seen here in our button component. So I'm just going to utilize our table and our atoms here. So just kind of coming in here. So just like I did with colors, we'll use this to easily locate our button. Again, we can also go, of course, the typical Figma file. So we'll just use this to kind of get used to it. But zooming in here on buttons. And now that we're here, we're just kind of just want to show everyone how we've kind of implemented those interactive states in some of our components. For example, just for today, just going to highlight the button component here as well for this. So by doing this, this just easily allows users to essentially, have the ease to showcase a prototype and retain just more of a smooth transition for those states. And then the next thing as well, we've also added custom smart animation. So two things here. So one, I just want to demo kind of this button. And so you can see, actually I'm going to flip back over here so everyone can kind of just see all of our prototyping. So all of our buttons and other components in the Shipwright file. So after this talk, feel free to download it to start kind of seeing what other kind of interaction and smart prototyping we've done here, but just to easily kind of build that in and bake that into the components themselves just allows for more ease for users. So just flipping over to our test button, you can see here, so since these animations are baked in, you can see easily our hover and our press state as well. So that's a really kind of handy way to go around just kind of utilizing that, making the kit, not only your UI kit usable for basic design, but also for prototyping measures. And then on that note too, just want to kind of quickly go over here to our knowledge and information center and just quickly touch. So beyond those custom smart animations we've made too, we've also kind of did here in terms of adding a new, just kind of some custom values for that. So we have our curve animation here with different kind of certain levels here. So definitely one thing about that is just to be easy to use throughout the UI kit itself for users. So essentially feel free though to check out all of our animations that we've essentially implemented here. And then I will actually go ahead and turn it over to Taran.
Awesome. Thanks, Kady. Those buttons are looking great and with new interactive animation and colors. So the another major update we have for you in this version is table component. I know we are all having trouble with table components, and as much as I would love for Figma to have the same table component as they have on FigJam, we gave a try to improve and enhance our table components. So since we have been using our atomic structure to make components, we have used it here as well. We started by making the most common types of cells and building a base level component that makes it easier for you to change and add more as needed. Now I will redirect towards this demo component that we have for you in this table component. If I select this component, you can see in this properties panel, we have used emojis to name our component properties to make them more fun and easy to find on the component properties panel. We have also written that in the knowledge center over here. A small documentation where we are using 3 emojis to name the properties. We are using the text or replacing text property to use the pencil emoji. We're using the eyeball emojis to use toggle visibility or Boolean property, and replace me for replace instance or swap instance properties. Now I'll just use simple tables to go back to the table component. Awesome. Now back to the tables. Once the cells were made, we use the auto layer feature to make table rows and columns. So we kind of created different versions of table columns and rows as well, so that you can have more flexibility and more styles embedded into your tables. So naming of cells is the another thing that we have focused on. As you can see, we gave each cell a proper naming in this auto layout feature, so that the users are able to understand like where they exactly are and what exactly they are focusing on. So if I hover on it, it actually shows me like which cell I'm kind of using and making changes to. The another thing, important thing about tables here is you can actually makes it easier for you to actually change and create multiple columns and create your own table. So I can just duplicate this and it will create a table for me. And it's really easy if I want to change a column text or column type to something else. For example, I want this third column to have the progress property. All I can do is select all the cells and change the type to progress bar. And you can have your own table created real quick. Another important thing I want to talk about is about naming conventions. Properly naming your layers is very important, especially when creating components in a design system, which is something we have talked about in our Shipwright design system course. So if you want to learn more about naming conventions, you should definitely check that out. Another important thing, update we have for you in this version is inputs. So we can jump right back into the inputs in our atoms over here. And the inputs we have is, remember the number of variants that we showcased in the previous version of Shipwright? We just reduced the number of inputs to just one component. And all you have here is we have divided in the 3 parts, the input component into 3 parts. First is header, second is the text field content, and third is the caption content. Now the header content has some properties regarding the required or hint. You can just turn that on and off based on the Boolean property. Again, we are using the same component property namings over here as well, so that we can have the consistent all across. The other thing is text field content. So I can easily change what exactly I need to choose, and even the states are built in the text field content. I can change the states from here to hover, focus, or disable as well. Another last part of the input component is the caption. We can change the type of caption as we want and where exactly we are using this input field. For example, if you're using that for password protection or something like that, I can change it to password here, and it will showcase me this text. And to easily change it, you can have your own caption here as well. Just an example. While we were at tables, I want to quickly showcase one thing that I forgot was we also created 2 tables in our organism where we have table, which is left column sticky, and header sticky as well. So this is really quickly, which is kind of embedded into all the animations are there as well. So you can use it directly from the organism in our Shipwright design system. And that's all we have for you. It's not just that, but we have also worked on the other components as well. Over to you, Kady.
So I don't think we have much else from our end for today. Just wanted to, again, go over some updates with everyone. But essentially, just wanted to remind everyone, feel free to download the new Shipwright release. And also check out our Shipwright design system course. A lot of our designers on the team will go over different kind of levels for starting a design system, kind of taking what you might have in a design system and kind of furthering it, leveling it up, and how to make it just easier across the board for yourself, your team, and then your team working with other developers. So please let us know if you have any feedback or comments on anything too. We also welcome that. We want Shipwright to essentially be in a collaborative improving process, not just from our end and our team, but for all of their designers and developers out there. So again, always leave comments in our community there, and we can look for ways to improve anything else, and we can also learn from everyone there as well. But thanks for joining us today, and I'll turn it over to Jacob.
So I have a couple questions, and so if anyone has questions that's watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, drop them in a comment or in a chat, and then we can Kady and Taran can answer them. So if you have questions about UI kits in general, like our experience using them, but I'm gonna queue up a couple questions I had, and I think this is kind of a fun one in regards to that. Like, what was your biggest frustration with other UI kits you've used in the past? And I know you've talked about how our first UI kit that we built, the first version of Shipwright, but maybe talk about, and whoever wants to go first, maybe Kady, because we were talking about it a little bit earlier, but what was your biggest frustration with other UI kits you've used in the past before Shipwright when it came to like using it like on a product, like on building something new?
Yeah. Just kind of talking a little bit more for everyone here, what we were discussing earlier, Jacob, was that exactly what you said. With like kind of our first release, it was, or other design systems out there, like from my end for UI kits, like I found that it was kind of almost like too built specifically for a product. And sometimes I would start projects where, for my own personal use, or, even on projects I'm on, kind of at work or day to day, I'm kind of like, this is a little bit too forward for me at times. Like I know products can be at a very kind of, high level. And so certain kind of UI kits like would kind of go like all the way, like here's, all the components, and they're kind of like built very extremely like specifically geared towards kind of like the brand that's in an overall kind of UI kit sometimes. And I think that's what we did a lot with our kind of our Shipwright release 1.0. And so kind of like that, just kind of all of us at Headway were just kind of thinking like, how can we roll that back? Like, and even myself, like, how can it kind of be rolled back to like more like the skin and, or I guess more like just like the bones of the structure? Like, how can I take the most basic things, or even have like this UI kit be very basic so that someone can take it at like the very beginning level, and so they can skip over just the first like, start of the, making buttons and all this stuff, but not have to like completely change everything so much that it takes forever or things like that. So how can Shipwright kind of just go in that direction and just be, kind of help that bridge first when starting a product? But not only that too, I think because I feel like in a way too, even if you have like a big product and you're kind of farther in that product and you have, maybe lots of customers and things like that, how can you even utilize Shipwright to just hone in on your design system, make sure you're using best practices, make sure you're aligning with designers and developers and things like that. Taran, not sure if you have anything you want to add to that as well.
I totally agree to that as well. My biggest frustration was the same thing. I think the systems out there, the UI kits out there, they actually give you too much, which you don't really need in your project, right? Like if I want to start my project, obviously they are not well built that I can actually use the same brand. We need to rebrand, we need to redesign the elements to make it usable in our projects. So when it comes to that, there are too many components that we don't really need. And that is the main biggest frustration, because we have to go through each of the pages, remove the components that we need. And what if they have like both, try to give all the things to the users, whereas they don't think about the users, what exactly is the project, right? Like if I'm using it in a mobile application, I don't need the web components. Or if I'm working on the desktop version, I don't need the mobile components. So there are so many things that we can improve. And that is the reason like we came up with Shipwright 2.0, which we are just providing just the basic essential components that you can get started with, like buttons. Buttons is something, we are not giving all different sizes of buttons or all, types or styles of buttons. It's just a normal basic one component that we are providing that you can actually change to whatever style that you want, which is really useful, and you can quickly start your project.
Yeah. It's funny because it's like over and over you see like bigger and bigger like UI kits, like there's more components and there's more of this, and it's like, but like what you're saying is like it's not about having more stuff, it's about having more useful stuff. Like, hey, here's like a tool that's actually useful, and it like I don't have to delete a bunch of crap or like rework a bunch. It's like it's set up to build a system, not to like delete what you don't need or whatever. So with this awesome question actually came through from Brian. I'm just going to share it up on the screen. So Brian asks, do you envision Shipwright being used for wireframes? Like, so maybe talk about that. I don't know who wants to take that question. Maybe Kady, we can go back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I essentially do envision Shipwright to be used for wireframes. I think it's like such a, again, more of that like bone level structure to where you could even roll it back. I know it has, you know, some of the colors hidden in terms of like our buttons and more of those interactive colors, and that might be a little bit too kind of high fidelity for more of like just a beginning wireframe stage. But that's the beauty of just kind of even, you know, using, our token system, our color system, and just easily in our feature plugin widget and stuff will help with that too. But easily just rolling things back very easily in terms of like, again, that starter Shipwright place, and then being able to use that more at a wireframe aspect. I know some of our components can look a little bit of the high fidelity ready, of course, but at the same time, a couple quick, essential, color changes or, other smaller things here and there can really kind of roll that back to a wireframe kind of aspect. So we do kind of envision that, being used for it. And then also in Shipwright 2, for anyone who's kind of familiar with it, if you're not, no worries. But in our file, we have our site blocks as well. So down at the bottom of the file, after atoms and tokens and everything, you'll see site blocks. We have some of those site blocks kind of prematurely built. So this can be used in terms of, wireframe. It's very, just kind of blocky. Backgrounds are white. There's just a placeholder kind of gray image for images. And then there's just like lorem ipsum text and things like that laid out. So we have different pages for like mobile and homepage as well. And then just different heroes, gallery,
we can throw that screen up. Are you going through that, Kady?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, I can throw that screen up. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. This could be helpful for anyone who might not be super familiar. So yeah, so this just lives down at our bottom here in our site blocks. So, kind of our thoughts behind this can be taken of two ways. So this can be a really good kind of jumping place to go towards that high fidelity, like essentially almost like ready to go, add your content in. But this can be even scaled back, again, very bare bones here, to where if we want to use this to be a little bit more wireframey, we can roll this right on back, just to get an idea of wireframing itself and what kind of user experience, what kind of content that someone might want to have, or just kind of organization of that content that you feature, depending on what kind of page you're building. So that was kind of our thoughts, essentially, with just helping to build this just to get a little bit more easier in terms of getting off the ground, utilizing components in the blocks just to easily, get started and build faster. And then being able to like really kind of just essentially, again, like let that user kind of determine where they want to go with this. If they want to take these blocks and move right towards high fidelity, they can take these blocks and move them kind of a little back and more that wireframe capability themselves.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Brian. It was a great question. All right, I'm going to go back to this other one. I think this one's kind of fun because you talked about the first version. Like, so at one point in Headway's history, we didn't have a UI kit to like work to start a project with. So what was it kind of like building that first version of our UI kit, now called Shipwright? And like, I guess like, right, it's like, hey, we need to build this thing that is like malleable and even more useful, and it's not just like this, like where it's like it's more of a palette than it is like, hey, here's like a pre-built application. Maybe you want to talk through like what that was like, because it was like 3 years ago, I would say, was when the first version was built. It was like 2020.
So
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
a while.
Yeah, so whoever wants to take that question, like what was it like kind of like approaching it, and what did we talk through as a team, like it's all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Taran, were you on the team yet when we first?
I wasn't there on the first
Okay.
No,
I'm very, very the original. Yeah, so I guess just kind of from my memory, just going back to kind of just the initial like first early days, Um, I think it was a lot of kind of just discussion amongst the team at first of like, we want to, you know, we kind of like we're, of course, designers, we are always, looking at UI kits and out there, like what's out there. Like, of course, as designers too, we want to be part of, collaborative, the Figma community, things like that. So that was kind of like another thing of like, how can we be, out in the community? How can we be collaborative within our team? What can we kind of do, put together a UI kit? But then also other reasons of like, how can we start utilizing, building Shipwright, for us and what I said to like help get our projects off the ground a little bit quicker, and those, just building those bones of just setting of like, all right, here we're going to do buttons, we're going to do colors, we're going to do, things like that. Cause we found ourselves, I think, in projects, just rebuilding buttons again and, or borrowing it from their projects. And again, it kind of goes back to that, kind of never ending thing of product and why design systems are used. There's like that screen, I think Brad Frost uses it, where, he shows a company and there's like 80 different buttons being used in all different colors and sizes and typography and things like that. So even though we weren't like that internally with our team, we were just thinking about like, how can we not have to, rebuild components? How can we save time there? How can we start to create something that can be utilized by everyone, and where can that really go? So I think that's kind of like the first days. And then Taran, I believe you kind of joined for more of like our 2.0, like the first launch. I believe you were kind of on the team helping too.
Yeah, definitely. I was there for the second version, creating the Shipwright 2.0. The reason basically was I think we needed that consistency of the things and quickly starting off the project, because when it comes to creating a project, whether you are on a desktop version or a mobile version, you need buttons or the basic components to actually start creating this, wireframe or in the sketchpad when you are just brainstorming the ideas and everything. So you need that blocks. And I think Brian kind of mentioned that as well. So Shipwright being used for the wireframes. So that was the initial conversation that we were having, was we need something that we can actually get started with, right? And that could make our process and the project real quick or faster. So that was the reason, like, we kind of started building out the version and kind of improving the version with the new features that Figma has to offer at that time.
Yeah. Brian actually has a really good question. And I know, Kady, you kind of mentioned some stuff with the dev team. Make sure I get the right thing to pull up here. Brian was asking if like there's a roadmap or plans for improvement and updates. Like, obviously we just published these updates we were just sharing today, but are there plans for like anything else? And I know Jake from our development team has been working on, it's a Figma widget, which isn't the same as a plugin. And from what I've been hearing from Jake and the dev team is that the cool thing about it is that the widget kind of removes the issues that a lot of the plugins out there have, like the design system plugins have, with syncing data between Figma and Storybook, I believe, and things that the dev team uses to implement design updates. So besides from that, and there'll be more on that soon, but with the token tool designed for design tokens. But is there anything else that we've been kind of working on for Shipwright, or maybe you want to comment on the token tool that Jake is working on?
Yeah, I don't know if we all like know exactly where like Shipwright's going to go next. I think that's definitely something we of course are going to keep, building Shipwright in the future. Like, we already kind of have some ideas. A lot of the updates today that we went over and that we didn't get a chance to go over, but are in our new release. Those have, again, just kind of came from just our kind of leveling up in the last, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And then just, again, a lot of those kind of arose through like our design system course of like, how can we better use, new implementations that Figma is building into their product, especially with properties, and just to make the process quicker and things like that. So I think that speaks to of like what you said, Jacob, with the new widget that we'll be releasing hopefully soon in the future, is that, how can we, again, just use the things and build things just to make and streamline that process faster. So not only the widget's like super cool, because like you can bring it up. You can easily, change, for instance, like all your typography instead of having to go through and change all your typesets and individuals and things like that. So you can just kind of easily populate, color, type those tokens overall, instead of kind of doing it one by one. So even that kind of streamlined process, like baked in with kind of the core of Shipwright to help with that will be great. And then like you mentioned too, just how to better, not only for designers who are using Shipwright and Figma every day or on a daily basis, but also like where can we help developers in this? Where do developers kind of sit in this? Because again, it is a common partnership with designers and developers. So how can we not only get a product out here in terms of more of like the design world of things, but how can we take anything that developers do into account? And shout out to Jake here at Headway. He's been doing a fantastic job just for the last several months, just kind of going really hard on that. And we've got some good things kind of cooking. So excited and happy for that release.
Yeah.
Taran, not sure if you had anything to add to that too on your end.
I would just add so Shipwright is again like a design system or a UI kit that keeps on improving, right? And there will be many more updates that will be coming along. All I can say is we are super excited and really kind of curious as well at the same time for the Figma config happening. And obviously there will be some new updates or features that Figma will be launching. And that is, I think, the next plan to keep updating and improving the Shipwright in terms of the new features that Figma has to offer. And plus, there are some of the things that while we are kind of using it on our daily basis on client projects, so we realize that there are some of the things that need to be improved right now as well regarding the icons or maybe, adding icon wrappers in future. And maybe like what Brian mentioned was regarding the wireframe. So we are kind of initiated this conversation regarding like how we can create a wireframe version of Shipwright as well, just out there using the same Shipwright, or do we really need another Shipwright version 2.0 wireframe version or something like that? So those are some of the discussions that we are having internally, but yep.
Awesome. Well, cool. The last question, thanks again, Brian, for that question. It's really great because again, we're always kind of like, we may not always have like a roadmap, but we definitely know like, hey, we want to make some improvements. Whether or not we know what those are today, but we definitely have more things coming, which is always great. The last question I wanted to ask was in regards to like, what's it like to use Shipwright? So like you have a brand new product you have to build out, like you pull up Shipwright, like what is that process kind of like? How's it been for you, like, kicking off projects compared to in the past when you didn't have it before?
Yeah, definitely. I can take this one. So it has been really easy, I would say, for us to actually kick off the client project, right? Like, because earlier at that times we were kind of thinking about, creating the brand guidelines, which was like colors, and then also thinking about the typography and what are the typos, typefaces that we have to use and all this kind of stuff, and then embed and create a design system or a UI kit for a client. Right now, what we can see is we can spend more time in mood boarding and, curating that and changing the UI kit that we have initially and rebranding those UI kit to the likings of the client projects on what exactly the client likes. So that gives us a great room or enough space to actually explore and brainstorm and, get more intuitive ideas to apply on those UI kit rather than just working on the buttons and then looking for typefaces and brand colors and all this kind of stuff. So it actually saves us almost, I would say, like 80% of the time to kick off the project. So earlier we were kind of doing the basic stuff, which took us like a week, whereas right now it just took us a couple of hours to curate the UI kit as per the client need. So yeah, I don't know if you have any points.
Yeah, just to echo you, Tara, I agree with that. I think it's pretty easy just to get it up and running and even seeing that over like transition over months and years, even with this new release of the very first day, like 3 years ago with Shipwright, like how much easier it is just to spin it up and get started on a client project again. And that's where it's been evolving. As I kind of previously mentioned before, it is just, as we've kind of used it in our projects and getting going and things like that, of just what what can we need at times or what don't we need at times and things like that, and just kind of taking note on that and taking stock on that, and then really kind of just, bringing that into, what we want to kind of transform next, revise next, release next, upgrade next, kind of best practices and things like that. So yeah, I think it's in, like, again, a great position as it is today, but there's always improvement. So we'll keep on improving it in any way possible.
Sure. Brian has one more question. We have another question too that came from LinkedIn. We'll answer Brian's pretty quick. Is Shipwright meant to be set up as a published library or a standalone file with the system within?
That's a great question. So we usually ask this question as well. So it totally depends, like, where exactly you're working and what kind of client that you have. So if you are using the Shipwright for an internal organization, I would recommend going and publishing it as a library, so that like what kind of icons or the buttons or the components being used, and who are the ones who are kind of, detaching the components, what components are being detached, how you can improve those. And there is just one library that you can use to make sure like everything is kind of consistent within your organization. But whereas, like, if you're using it for a simple freelancing project as a client project, or maybe in a digital design agency where you have multiple clients, so I would recommend using a standalone system so that you can quickly rebrand it as per the client needs and quickly use it to create whatever product you are going to work on. So that will save a lot of time.
Cool. Awesome. All right, we'll jump this question from LinkedIn. I think this one's interesting. So how are these UI kits used in the UI and UX audits? I know we have another file on Figma Community that's for doing audits specifically, but in the context of Shipwright, I don't know, whoever wants to grab this one as far as audits go. Yeah, any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I have a couple of initial thoughts. Yeah, as Jacob mentioned, as you mentioned, we do have kind of that UX audit file. So that's going to be a little bit more geared towards UX audit. But I definitely still think that Shipwright, even though it's meant for more, I'd say, design system, I'd still think that initially when kind of utilizing it onto your product, no matter where kind of your product is at, in the world of growth itself, I still think it can be paired in terms of that, pairing it and utilizing it in more of that UX audit sense. And specifically, I'd probably say more around the UX audit of the UI itself that you're comparing to. So again, just for instance, just because, taking stock of the UX audit on any kind of UI elements, so you can review like, your existing product, of course, to see if it's meeting like certain, business needs, user experience needs, accessibility requirements. But I'd say in terms of that UI, you can really allow yourself to kind of identify just overall your UI. I'd say identify any like pain points, any like pros and cons in your UI, to really just kind of look at any kind of metrics throughout, and then also just kind of take stock of kind of what you currently have in your UI. So I know I mentioned in reference that kind of bread frost slide, but even kind of doing an audit, say, of your buttons in your kind of your product. Looking at the different kind of user UI of your buttons, and then again, what it means in terms of that UX experience of what you're communicating, whether it's primary, secondary, tertiary buttons, and then again, your states of, what you're kind of naming your states, and not even just like within your design system. But I think it would be great to like utilize Shipwright and reference like our interactive states of like how we're using buttons, and then seeing what, designers on your team might be calling them. Like if there's any non-alignment on your team, to see if everyone's aligned in terms of states and naming conventions, and then even taking that and using that in terms of like the developer side, just to make sure that designers and developers are consistent with, naming conventions, setting up things like that. And then even just kind of, again, same with colors, for instance. So I think it could be utilized in that sense, just to kind of do like a really good gut check on all the bones, and again, just make sure, see the gaps where maybe designers and developers might might not be like aligning on certain things. Taran, not sure if you had anything to add on that one either.
Well, I think you did a great job in answering that question. I think I'll just echo you. And another thing I would add on to that was like making sure like all the components are kind of stitched to the UI kit as well. So whatever you guys, whatever components that you're using for your project are kind of linked to all the UI kits, making sure everything's kind of accessible and the colors that you use is accessible enough, and they're passing the contrast compliance and all this kind of stuff. So those are some basic things we have taken care of in the UI kit. So you guys can just have a look in there and make sure comparing that to the Shipwright that we have, whether that is kind of applicable there, whenever UI kit you want to audit. So just that. Yep.
Yeah, and my thought too is like if you're for us, like we're using Shipwright because it prevents like those UI and UX audit issues. It doesn't prevent all of them, but it like writes like, hey, these things are set up where like all the buttons are the same, all the fonts and the typographies used the same way. That's like the benefits of having this like system versus like these one-off, feature updates that like don't align with anything else that's in the product for some reason or whatever, right? Or there's old stuff, right? It's like it kind of prevents that from happening. So that's kind of my thought on the Shipwright like UI kit. Is that it's a preventative tool, right? It's like one, it helps you work faster, but it also helps prevent these like issues from happening with inconsistencies and stuff like that. So yeah, I think we can wrap things up. So thanks again, Taran, and thanks again, Kady, for sharing, answering questions, sharing all the updates today, and just doing a little quick demo. Hopefully everyone got some value out of it, or help them rethink like what they're doing in their current design process, and maybe they can check out the kit.
Thank you for giving us all the love and support for the previous version of Shipwright. Super excited for this one.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, everybody.